Behind the dazzling lights of Hollywood's golden age, not everything was as glamorous as it seemed. While millions swooned over movie idols and read headlines about fairy tale romances, the real stories often played out in secret, far away from the eager eyes of fans and reporters. These were marriages conducted in the shadows, driven by desperation, scandal, or sheer defiance. Weddings that had to be hidden from powerful studios, jealous rivals, or the public itself. The truth is, for every glitzy red carpet union, there was a hush-hush ceremony whispered about only in private. Why did so many of old Hollywood's brightest stars risk it all to tie the knot in secrecy? And what really happened when the truth finally came out? Tonight, we peel back the curtain on the secret weddings that shook Tinseltown to its core, where love, ambition, and scandal collided behind closed doors, forever changing the course of Hollywood history. Are you ready to hear the vows no one was supposed to know about? Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. Clark Gable and Carole Lombard weren't just Hollywood royalty. They were the living, breathing embodiment of star power, charm, and old-fashioned American charisma. But their love story was anything but straightforward. In the 1930s, both were tied to other people, and, more importantly, bound by the suffocating contracts and ironclad morality clauses that the studios imposed on their biggest stars. Gable, the so-called King of Hollywood, was stuck in a loveless marriage to Rhea Langham, while Lombard was only recently divorced from actor William Powell. Their romance was an open secret in Hollywood circles, but to the world, it had to remain hidden. The stakes were impossibly high. If word of an affair, or worse, a secret marriage, leaked to the press, it could mean instant ruin for both. Gable's studio, MGM, had invested millions in his image as the dashing, unattainable leading man. Public knowledge of a new marriage, especially one so soon after Lombard's divorce, could derail box office numbers and fuel tabloid scandals. The couple's every move was watched, their phone calls sometimes monitored by studio fixers who specialized in damage control. Determined to be together, Gable and Lombard hatched a plan as audacious as any script they'd ever read. In March 1939, after Gable finally managed to secure a divorce, the pair slipped away from Los Angeles under the guise of a simple weekend getaway. Their destination, Kingman, Arizona, a dusty railroad town miles from the Hollywood spotlight. There, in a modest Methodist church, Gable and Lombard became husband and wife in a quick, quiet ceremony, attended by only a handful of friends and a single photographer. There were no extravagant gowns, no tuxedos, and certainly no press, just whispered vows and genuine emotion. The secrecy didn't last long, but by the time the news hit, the deed was done. Fans were stunned, but instead of the backlash MGM had feared, there was a wave of public affection. The story of their elopement became the stuff of legend, a rare moment when Hollywood's manufactured fantasy met a genuine, unscripted love story. Gable and Lombard's union lasted only 3 short years, ending tragically with Lombard's untimely death in 1942. But their secret wedding remains one of Tinseltown's most romantic and rebellious chapters. Loretta Young and Clark Gable. Loretta Young was the picture of grace and morality in 1930s Hollywood. Admired for her elegance and her ability to navigate the pressures of a studio system obsessed with controlling every detail of its stars' lives. But behind the scenes, Young harbored a secret that would haunt her for decades, a secret wedding, and an even greater secret that no studio wanted the world to discover. In the mid-1930s, during the filming of Call of the Wild, Loretta Young and Clark Gable became close, drawn together by their mutual charm and magnetic screen presence. But Gable was still married, and Young was under the constant scrutiny of the press and the morality police at Warner Brothers. The relationship soon took a turn that neither expected. Young became pregnant, a situation that was unthinkable for an unmarried actress at the time. The studio's response was swift and ruthless. Young vanished from public view, reportedly suffering from a mysterious illness, while rumors swirled. Desperate to avoid scandal and protect both their careers, Young and her family orchestrated one of the most elaborate cover-ups in Hollywood history. After giving birth in secret, Young arranged for her baby girl, Judy, to be placed in an orphanage for nearly 2 years. When the heat of public scrutiny died down, Young adopted her own child, presenting the story as an act of charity. Throughout her life, she never publicly confirmed the truth. Even as speculation mounted and Judy grew to resemble her famous father, Gable, both Loretta and Clark maintained silence. But what many people don't know is that Young and Gable desperate to do the right thing, but hemmed in by circumstance, reportedly held a secret ceremony, pledging themselves to each other in a private religious commitment, even though a legal wedding was impossible at the time. It was a secret union with no marriage certificate, no witnesses beyond a close confidant, and certainly no approval from the studios that controlled their fate. In those days, for an actress as devout and image-conscious as Young, this clandestine ceremony meant everything. The story didn't come to light until decades later, when Judy Lewis, Young's daughter, finally uncovered her true parentage. For years, she had lived as the shadow child of two of Hollywood's brightest stars, her existence hidden to protect reputations and studio profits. When the truth was finally revealed, it stunned fans, but also underscored the impossible choices stars had to make to survive in the old Hollywood system. The legacy of Loretta Young and Clark Gable's secret wedding and secret child remains one of the most heartbreaking tales in all of show business. Wiki Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. The marriage of Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall stands as one of classic Hollywood's most legendary romances, but few realize how much secrecy and subterfuge surrounded their wedding. In the 1940s, Bogart was already the king of noir, hard-boiled, world-weary, and deeply private. Lauren Bacall, meanwhile, was barely 20 years old when she first locked eyes with Bogart on the set of To Have and Have Not. Their chemistry was instant and undeniable, but Hollywood's power brokers were less than thrilled about this budding relationship. For one thing, Bogart was already married to Mayo Methot, a tempestuous actress known for her drinking and violent outbursts. Their toxic relationship was legendary around Hollywood, with neighbors reporting fights loud enough to wake half of Beverly Hills. Yet Bogart, known for his loyalty as much as his stubbornness, hesitated to seek a divorce. Studios had a vested interest in keeping their stars' personal lives tidy and non-controversial. Bogart was under contract at Warner Brothers, and Bacall, new to fame, had her every move scrutinized. When Bogart finally divorced Methot, the press smelled blood. Paparazzi hounded Bacall's hotel, and the tabloids salivated over rumors of infidelity and scandal. The studios did everything they could to distance themselves from the chaos, and both actors were warned not to appear in public together, lest it ruin Bacall's ingenue image or damage Bogart's bankable tough guy persona. The pair decided that if they wanted to be together, they'd have to do it far from prying eyes. On May 21, 1945, with little warning and almost no fanfare, Bogart and Bacall slipped away to a remote farmhouse in Ohio, owned by Bogart's close friend, Louis Bromfield. The ceremony was intimate. Just a handful of friends, a simple wedding dress, and the quiet countryside for company. No reporters, no studio heads, and no Hollywood spectacle. The secrecy was absolute. Even Bacall's mother barely made it to the event. For days, the press speculated and searched for clues. Some insiders whispered about the quick turnaround between Bogart's divorce and his new marriage, but the truth was never as salacious as the rumors. The love between Bogart and Bacall endured, giving rise to a Hollywood power couple whose bond would become the stuff of legend. Their secret wedding was not just an act of love, but an act of rebellion against a system that tried to script every moment of their lives. The public eventually embraced them, charmed by their on-screen and off-screen partnership. Still, that quiet, hidden ceremony in rural Ohio remains a reminder that, in Hollywood, true love often had to outsmart the spotlight just to survive. Deaggio as Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Few Hollywood romances have ever burned as brightly, or as publicly, as that of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Their story wasn't just tabloid fodder, it was the global headline, the obsession of gossip columnists and the church alike. Yet, despite the endless flashbulbs and fevered speculation, when it came time for them to marry, Taylor and Burton orchestrated one of the most secretive and controversial weddings of the era. Their romance began in the early 1960s on the set of Cleopatra, the most expensive and troubled production Hollywood had ever seen. Taylor was already a superstar, her violet eyes and tempestuous spirit making her box office gold. Burton, meanwhile, was the charismatic Welsh actor with a voice like thunder and a reputation for stealing scenes and hearts. Both were married, Taylor to singer Eddie Fisher, Burton to actress Sybil Williams. Their affair unfolded in full view of the press, leading to a public outcry, condemnation by the Vatican, and even official censure from Hollywood itself. Studio executives panicked as sponsors threatened boycotts, and producers worried that the scandal would tank their investment in Cleopatra. With the world watching and the stakes impossibly high, Taylor and Burton knew that their wedding could not be a public spectacle. After lengthy and painful divorces, the couple slipped away to Montreal, Canada in March 1964. Choosing a discreet location was essential. By this point, reporters literally trailed them across continents. Their chosen venue, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, was tightly guarded, with decoy cars and misinformation circulated to throw off the press. The ceremony itself was shockingly intimate for two of the world's most photographed people. No movie moguls, no press, just a few trusted friends, Taylor's children, and the priest. Elizabeth wore a daffodil yellow dress instead of the traditional white, a quiet nod to her defiance and her sense of personal style. Burton, for all his grandiosity on stage, was visibly nervous, clutching Taylor's hand and whispering words meant only for her. When news finally broke that the two had married, public reaction was instant and explosive. Some called it a victory for love against all odds. Others, a brazen affront to morality and tradition. For Taylor and Burton, the secrecy was the only way to claim a piece of their own lives, a sanctuary from the hurricane of public opinion. Their wedding was just the beginning of a wild, passionate, and famously tumultuous union that would see the pair marry, divorce, and marry again. In the end, their secret wedding was more than a scandal. It was a declaration that, even in Hollywood, some vows were meant to be whispered rather than shouted. Jean Harlo and Paul Bern. The marriage of Jean Harlo and Paul Bern remains one of old Hollywood's most tragic and mysterious unions, shadowed not only by secrecy, but by controversy that would echo for decades. Harlo was MGM's platinum blonde sensation, her image carefully crafted as both innocent and daring, her popularity explosive. Paul Bern, a respected producer and writer at MGM, was nearly twice her age, reserved, and utterly devoted to Harlo. Their connection seemed unlikely to outsiders, but in the cloistered world of Hollywood, their relationship blossomed behind closed doors. By 1932, Harlo was riding a wave of success, but constantly battling the suffocating grip of studio boss Louis B. Mayer. Mayer was obsessed with controlling every detail of his stars' personal lives, especially their marriages. Harlo's previous marriage had ended in scandal, and Mayer feared that another misstep could damage both Harlo's career and MGM's investment in her. Paul Bern, for his part, had his own secrets: a troubled personal life, rumors of a previous common-law marriage, and a history of family tragedy that he never discussed in public. Determined to be together, Harlo and Bern plotted a secret wedding that would avoid both the gossip columns and Mayer's wrath. On July 2, 1932, the couple held a small ceremony at Bern's Benedict Canyon home. Only a handful of close friends and family were present. There were no reporters, no photographers, and no press release, unheard of for a star of Harlo's caliber. For a brief moment, they enjoyed their happiness in private, escaping, however briefly, the relentless demands of fame. But Hollywood's secrets rarely stay buried. Within weeks, tragedy struck. Paul Bern was found dead in the same home where the wedding took place. The official story was suicide, but rumors swirled about possible foul play, blackmail, and studio interference. Mayer and MGM's fixers moved swiftly, managing the story, hiding evidence, and ensuring Harlo remained insulated from the worst of the speculation. To this day, the circumstances surrounding Bern's death are fiercely debated among Hollywood historians. Jean Harlo was devastated, but forced by the studio to continue working as though nothing had happened. The details of their brief marriage, the private ceremony, and the pain that followed became a Hollywood legend, a cautionary tale about the price of fame, the power of studios, and the secret stars carried to their graves. The wedding that began in hope ended in mystery, and it stands as one of old Hollywood's most chilling and unforgettable chapters. Judy Garland and Vincent Minnelli. For Judy Garland, life in Hollywood was a whirlwind of triumphs and heartbreaks. By the early 1940s, she had already conquered the world as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But behind her public smile was a young woman, battered by the demands of MGM, a controlling mother, and a series of romantic misadventures that made her the subject of endless gossip. So when she found comfort in the arms of Vincente Minnelli, the acclaimed director known for his artistic brilliance and sophisticated charm, she wanted, perhaps for the first time, a relationship that was truly her own. But even as Garland and Minnelli's affection grew during the filming of Meet Me in St. Louis, MGM executives watched with a wary eye. Judy was one of the studio's most valuable stars, and her image was to be protected at all costs. Rumors of her fragile mental health and tumultuous private life were already giving the studio headaches. Any news of an engagement, let alone a wedding, was considered a risk, a distraction that could tank publicity campaigns or give rivals ammunition. In Minnelli, studio heads saw a stabilizing force, but they were determined to manage every detail, insisting the relationship be kept private until they could control the narrative. In June 1945, Garland and Minnelli quietly slipped away to Santa Barbara, choosing the historic and discreet home of a friend as their wedding venue. The ceremony was so secret that not even some of Garland's closest co-stars were invited, and the press was left grasping for details. The small wedding was witnessed only by immediate family and a few trusted friends, with Garland wearing a pale blue suit instead of a traditional gown. The ceremony, filled with laughter and tenderness, was a rare island of peace in a life otherwise dominated by chaos. When word of the wedding finally leaked, MGM scrambled to spin the story as a fairy tale romance, but the truth was far more complex. Garland, ever the professional, returned to the set just days later, the pressures of fame never far behind. While her marriage to Minnelli would bring moments of joy, including the birth of their daughter, Liza Minnelli, it was also tested by the relentless demands of their careers and Garland's ongoing battles with anxiety and exhaustion. Their secret wedding stands as a poignant reminder of the lengths Hollywood stars went to protect a sliver of privacy. For Garland, the union was a defiant act of hope, even as the world outside threatened to intrude. Today, the story of their hidden nuptials lingers as one of old Hollywood's most bittersweet love stories, a fleeting escape from the spotlight, captured in vows whispered away from the cameras. Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini. Few weddings in old Hollywood, or in world cinema, were as secretive, controversial, and consequential as the union between Ingrid Bergman and Italian director Roberto Rossellini. By the late 1940s, Ingrid Bergman was not only a star, she was revered as an emblem of grace and integrity. Films like Casablanca and Notorious had made her beloved around the globe, and her personal life, so far, seemed to reflect the dignity of her roles. But that all changed when Bergman crossed paths with Rossellini, the trailblazing filmmaker whose gritty neo-realism and unapologetic vision stood in stark contrast to Hollywood fantasy. The two met while Bergman was still married to Dr. Petter Lindström and Rossellini to screenwriter Marcella de Marchis. Their professional collaboration quickly deepened into something far more intense. The affair shocked not only the studios, who depended on Bergman's wholesome image, but also the American public, which had come to view her as a kind of national treasure. The resulting scandal was so fierce that Bergman was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Senate, and the Catholic Church condemned the couple's relationship. With both facing global condemnation and the collapse of their previous marriages, Bergman and Rossellini knew that a traditional Hollywood wedding was out of the question. So in May 1950, they quietly arranged a small civil ceremony in the remote Italian village of Juarez, Mexico, far from prying eyes and gossip columnists. The wedding was so secretive that only a handful of close friends attended, and details were kept under strict wraps until the couple was safely wed and out of the country. Bergman wore a simple suit, eschewing Hollywood glamour for an understated elegance that matched the gravity of the moment. Their marriage caused an uproar on both sides of the Atlantic. In Hollywood, Bergman's name was scrubbed from studio rosters, and she was shunned by many former friends and colleagues. In Italy, the couple became a symbol of both artistic freedom and social rebellion. But despite the firestorm, Bergman and Rossellini created some of the era's most daring films together, redefining both her career and the boundaries of cinematic storytelling. Their wedding, born of defiance and devotion, forced Hollywood and its audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about love, morality, and the price of authenticity. Even today, the secret union of Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini is remembered as one of the most transformative and tumultuous episodes in film history, forever altering the trajectory of two extraordinary lives. Joan Crawford and Franchot Tone. Joan Crawford's career is almost synonymous with Hollywood's rise. Her transformation from ambitious chorus girl to Oscar-winning powerhouse was the stuff of legend. Yet, behind every headline and red carpet photo was a woman fiercely determined to control her own destiny in a world where image was everything and privacy was a luxury. Nowhere was this more evident than in her whirlwind romance with actor Franchot Tone, a story stitched together with secrecy, studio interference, and the ever-present threat of scandal. By 1935, Crawford was one of MGM's brightest stars, a bankable name who carried films and shaped trends. Franchot Tone, meanwhile, was a respected stage actor, intelligent, refined, and rapidly rising in Hollywood's ranks. Their attraction was magnetic, but MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer saw danger in a union between two high-profile talents, especially with Crawford's complicated personal life drawing constant attention from the press. Studio contracts strictly limited how and when stars could marry, with the looming threat of suspension or negative publicity if they stepped out of line. Undeterred, Crawford and Tone pursued their relationship away from the public eye, often meeting in secret, their romance fueled by late-night scripts and whispered conversations on dimly lit sets. Yet, as speculation grew and paparazzi sniffed around for any hint of an engagement, the pressure mounted. Mayer, fearing a box office backlash, or worse, the distraction of an unhappy marriage, tried to discourage the match at every turn. Gossip columnists were paid to look the other way, and both actors were warned to avoid being photographed together outside of official studio events. Finally, on October 11, 1935, Crawford and Tone eloped in the most private ceremony possible, a far cry from the lavish weddings fans had come to expect from their favorite stars. In a simple room at Crawford's Brentwood home, with only a justice of the peace and a few trusted confidants in attendance, the couple exchanged vows. Crawford wore a modest dress, eschewing Hollywood glamour for a sense of intimacy she rarely enjoyed. The marriage, while initially passionate, soon buckled under the strain of studio politics, jealousy, and relentless work schedules. Still, the secret ceremony remains a testament to their desire for authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. Crawford would later admit that the secrecy was both a blessing and a curse, a chance to claim a sliver of private happiness, but one always shadowed by the demands of fame and the meddling of powerful men. Their brief union, born in secrecy and ended in heartbreak, reveals just how high the stakes were for stars who dared to love on their own terms. In the annals of old Hollywood, Joan Crawford and Franchot Tone's secret wedding stands as a powerful reminder. Sometimes, the most scandalous love stories are those that never got the fairy tale ending. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. By the early 1950s, Marilyn Monroe was the face of American glamour, a rising superstar whose every move captivated the public and sent columnists scrambling for scoops. Joe DiMaggio, on the other hand, was already a legend in his own right, retired from the New York Yankees, but immortalized as Joltin' Joe. Their romance was a collision of two icons from different worlds. Monroe, the shimmering symbol of Hollywood's promise and peril. DiMaggio, the stoic sports hero who seemed immune to showbiz drama. But beneath the surface, both lived with a kind of loneliness that only their union seemed able to touch. The studios had a vested interest in keeping Monroe's personal life as sanitized as possible. 20th Century Fox executives felt a high-profile marriage, especially to someone outside the Hollywood system, might disrupt her carefully cultivated image and risk alienating her rapidly growing fan base. For DiMaggio, wary of the constant flash of cameras, the idea of a public wedding was nightmarish. The couple, beset by the relentless press and persistent rumors, realized the only way to claim their relationship as their own was to keep the details hidden, even from many of their closest friends. On January 14, 1954, Monroe and DiMaggio outwitted the press with a wedding in San Francisco, far from the glare of Hollywood. The event was staged with the precision of a covert operation. The pair filed for their marriage license under Monroe's legal name, Norma Jean Mortensen, to keep the news from leaking prematurely. Only a small handful of friends and family were told the truth about the date and time. At City Hall, Monroe arrived in a dark tailored suit with a white fur collar, elegant, understated, and in sharp contrast to her movie star persona. DiMaggio wore a simple suit, his trademark restraint on full display. The couple exchanged vows in a brief civil ceremony, witnessed by Monroe's acting coach and DiMaggio's brother. Word spread within hours, but by then, the newlyweds had retreated to a discreet hotel, avoiding the chaos of the city's adoring and curious public. As news of the union broke, fans and reporters descended on City Hall and the hotel, hoping for a glimpse or a quote. The wedding made front-page news across the country and quickly became one of the most talked-about events of the decade. Yet for all the excitement, the marriage itself was marked by misunderstanding, jealousy, and the unrelenting pressures of fame. Monroe's star continued to soar, while Deaggio struggled with the reality of life in the Hollywood spotlight. Their union lasted only 9 tumultuous months before ending in divorce. Still, the secrecy and intrigue surrounding their wedding cemented its place in Hollywood legend, a fleeting moment of hope and privacy in lives otherwise ruled by the demands of stardom. Greta Garbo and John Gilbert. No list of Hollywood's secret weddings is complete without the enigmatic story of Greta Garbo and John Gilbert, a romance so shrouded in mystery that, for decades, fans and film historians have debated whether the ceremony actually took place. Garbo was the ultimate enigma. Her beauty, talent, and air of aloofness set her apart in an industry obsessed with oversharing. John Gilbert, by contrast, was Hollywood's great romantic idol, famed for his passionate screen kisses and personal charm. Together, they set the town alight, igniting a love affair that captivated the public and set off alarm bells in every studio boardroom. Their romance began in the late 1920s, just as Hollywood was making the turbulent transition from silent pictures to talkies. Garbo was MGM's most bankable asset, a rare foreign star whose mystique translated into enormous ticket sales. Gilbert, meanwhile, was in the midst of a career peak, one of the most beloved leading men of his time. But as their passion deepened, studio chief Louis B. Mayer grew anxious. Garbo's carefully constructed image as the untouchable Swedish Sphinx would, Mayer feared, be shattered by marriage to the scandal-prone Gilbert. According to persistent rumors, many of them fanned by insiders and later repeated in memoirs, Garbo and Gilbert attempted to marry in a secret ceremony at his Beverly Hills home. Some claimed there were flowers and candles, a minister called at the last minute, and only a handful of trusted friends in attendance. Others insisted the studio intervened at the 11th hour, sending a fixer to halt the proceedings before vows could be exchanged. Garbo herself was famously ambivalent, telling friends she wanted to be alone, but, for a time, also wanting to be with Gilbert more than anything. The truth may never be fully known. What is certain is that the two came heartbreakingly close to official union. MGM reportedly threatened Garbo with suspension if she defied their wishes, reminding her of the ironclad morality clauses in her contract. Gilbert's career began to falter amid these personal and professional storms. Their relationship ended, but the rumors of a secret, nearly forgotten wedding lingered for decades. When questioned about it years later, Garbo would only smile cryptically, offering neither confirmation nor denial. Whether the vows were spoken or only dreamed of, the legend of Greta Garbo and John Gilbert's secret wedding is a symbol of Hollywood's golden age, a time when love, ambition, and corporate power collided in ways both thrilling and tragic. Their story endures as one of cinema's most haunting what-ifs, and their whispered wedding, real or imagined, remains a tantalizing chapter in Hollywood's Book of Secrets. Old Hollywood's secret weddings remind us that the real drama wasn't always on the big screen. It played out in hidden chapels, whispered promises, and the fierce fight for a private life behind the spotlight. If you enjoyed these untold stories of romance and rebellion, don't forget to hit like, share this with fellow classic movie fans, and subscribe for more Hollywood mysteries and legends. Which secret wedding shocked you most? Let us know in the comments, and join us next time as we dig up more lost tales from Tinseltown.